Donald Trump is making some really big moves as far as the Justice Department goes. The whole legal team there are getting cleaned out. You're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. Did you see this? Trump Justice Department says it fired employees involved in prosecutions of the president. So there were about 12 of them in total. They were all part of Jack Smith's team, and they are all done, right? Gone. Gonzo. Jack had enough good sense to leave before that, but he's just effectively ending the government careers, at least for now, of these prosecutors. And you understand like why this is happening and probably why he has to do that. People are freaking out. He's been firing like thousands and they're like, how can he do this? I'm like, you know what a CEO does when they come in and they take over a company? They make sure that they have everybody on the same page. In other words, you either subscribe to that CEO's vision or you're out. It's just the way the world works. And the only place that doesn't work like that is Washington, D.C., because you seem to have a job just for life if you're a government employee. And Trump's coming in like a private sector employee, and he's like, nope, you know what? You don't buy into this. You don't buy into me. You don't buy into the MAGA movement. Then guess what? We don't need you here. And so all of this stuff now is starting to shift and is starting to change. He just got rid of all of the Jack Smith prosecutors. A big, big deal. Here's a congresswoman speaking about how great this is and, you know, it needed to happen.
Republican Congresswoman Kat Cammack of Florida was in the last Congress, served on the Government Weaponization Subcommittee. So you are the perfect person to talk about this today. First of all, just your initial reaction that you're seeing already.
Well, it's incredible, honestly. This is long overdue. These are individuals who violated their oath of office, weaponized the justice system with the end goal being a political outcome, which was stop Trump. These individuals intimidated witnesses, they withheld evidence, and I think that their firing should just be the beginning. Honestly, if we're going to be back into a place where we are a nation of law and order and accountability, there need to be legal consequences for these individuals. That is something that the American people demanded in this election, and I think that this is a very good start, but we know how deep the weaponization of our federal government goes, and it's going to take a lot of work, and a lot of people are going to be held to account.
So a lot of people freak out when they hear that. They're like, wait a second, now you're going to go after them. But think about what they did to Donald Trump. And all I would point out is like, you can't keep doing this, right? And so Trump needs to clean things up so that we're not weaponizing a system against people, because it's exactly what they did to him. And I'll tell you, this can flip and this can work, you know, for or against either side, right? So you've got to have a fair system where they're not saying, okay, because we don't agree with you politically, we're going to try and find something, anything we can to try and take you out. Think about all of those state cases. Think about what went down in Georgia. I mean, that was just a disaster because Fani Willis was just a disaster, and, you know, her relationship was a disaster. And then it eventually, you know, just got tossed because they can't move forward because she's been disqualified because of the disaster that she is, shall we say. And now we're learning that, by the way, Garland may have had a hand in that he might have been communicating with the boyfriend down in Georgia, and that the boyfriend from Georgia, to the tune of what did taxpayers pay there? $700,000 to him, a lot of hours adding up. You know, Fanny, she's a gray goose kind of girl, didn't she say? So not a cheap date. I don't know. Maybe he's the cheap date. Anyway, he's going up to Washington, D.C., and she's making sure he's paid for it. There's there. I mean, and that needs to be investigated because she was with him before she hired him. Therefore, she hired her boyfriend. Therefore, there's some kind of exchange from a monetary standpoint that's going on there that was not disclosed. And so that has to be dealt with. That's one case. But then you get the Letitia James case, which just blows my mind because, you know, business reporter I'm looking at it going, well, what does that mean for New York as a whole? I mean, who the heck wants to do business in New York if you're subject to some kind of crazy AG saying, well, I'm going to go after you because I think you're a political threat? I mean, that is messed up. And this is why I'm furious that the Court of Appeals has not thrown this thing out. Second Court of Appeals, the Court of Appeals for New York State. They've been dragging their feet, and they know exactly that this is way, 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 way too much and never, ever should have been brought. But they're dragging their feet. Jack Smith, he's done. Alvin Bragg, that didn't really, I guess it got the convicted felon. That's what they really wanted, right? That little label. these idiots who brought these cases, they actually all could be in jeopardy now because all of them are doing really weird things. Like Letitia James, for example, who's issuing this challenge, not just on the federal funds, but on the immigration front. And I'm just going to tell you, Letitia, if there's one thing that the federal government has control over, you can go to the Commerce Clause, you can go to Section 8. I will tell you this, we have control as a nation over who comes in to our country. Our border is controlled by us. Therefore, it is absolutely within the jurisdiction of the U.S. federal government to be going after these criminals that are in the country. Incidentally, you know who had some really, really strong words to say about that? None other than the new press secretary for the United States of America, for the White House. Caroline Leavitt today said, listen, they're criminals. They're criminals just because they're in the country. So it doesn't even matter. Like, we can deport them if they're here illegally. That in and of itself is a crime. So Letitia's trying to push back against that. So is the AG out in California. And I have news for them. They're going to find themselves in a whole bunch of trouble. Quick shout out to my financial firm, 76 Research. So you've been watching the market this week. Deep seek, right? It's become a verb because apparently the Chinese have figured out a cheaper mousetrap on AI. I don't know as I entirely buy it. We just put a report out about this last night, which I think you will find very, very interesting. Go to 76 Reporter, 76research.com, use code word dollar, sign up. You can get our research there, or look at those model portfolios, because we have 3 different model portfolios that really help you invest in this new MAGA movement and this new economy. We have American Resilience. We have an income builder portfolio. We have an inflation protection portfolio. I really encourage you to do that. But Rob and I put out a piece just last night that basically looked at what was going on with Deep Six and what it meant for technology. And Donald Trump had the right answers on this. He's like, look, you know what? If it makes us more competitive, all the better. I'm just going to say this. Don't you think it's a little bit weird that China comes out with this? Like, just 48 hours after, for goodness sakes, 48 hours after we announced this huge investment, $500 million, billion dollars, forgive me, $500 billion, all in AI. I mean, with Larry Ellison and the Japanese, let me tell you, the Chinese are up to something. It was like, people were like, oh, it's their Sputnik moment. Are they trying to prove like they can do this so much better? But Trump had a good reaction. It's like, okay, if you can do it better, guess what? It's just better for us because we have the investment, we have the people, we have the engineers, and we have the companies that are doing this. So I would just say, look, the market freaked out. But ultimately, what you want to bet on are really good companies for the long run. Oh, Leslie, you are super generous. Thank you so much. I just want to give, Leslie was one of our very, very first people here on this channel. So she and I have a special relationship. She's advising Letitia to get a hobby or some therapy or something. Leslie, the problem is, Leslie Kimbrell, everyone, the problem is this is all Letitia has, right? The only reason we're even talking about her, the only reason you or I even know her name is because she's out there going on and on and on about Trump all the time. That's her only reason for existence. It's her only reason for being. Go back to all those campaign tapes that she was like, I'm going to go get Trump. I'm going to get Trump. I'm your answer to getting Trump. I have steel in my backbone or whatever. I mean, so, I agree with you. She needs to get a hobby. She needs to retire. She needs some therapy, but she's not going to do any of it because she's just thinking about her next political move. And I wouldn't be surprised if the woman, believe it or not, has presidential ambitions, which is terrifying. But this is why she's saying stuff like that.
Under my leadership, my office sued Donald Trump over 100 times. And the basis of all of that was Project 2025. So he cannot distance himself from something that he has attempted to implement when he was president of these United States. And
okay, but you know what? Whatever. Project 2025. It's actually pretty good. It's actually really good. And there's a lot of smart people that were involved in it, I'm just going to say, but like everybody was freaking out about that. Some of my friends over at Heritage had a hand in that. It was all Heritage and it's great. Like you can go to Project 2025. We've talked about that. They're not like mysterious. They're very proud of their work. And a lot of really smart people, including ones with a real heavy familiarity with the Constitution, constitutional law scholar types, were putting a lot of effort into figuring out what could and couldn't be done as Donald Trump was coming back into office, because they wanted to be ready, right? Like, you want to be ready. You don't want to sit there and have to finagle and hope and pray that this or that happens, because then you're not on offense, you're on defense. And that's what they did last time around. And we can't have that, because then we're going to be in a Russia situation all over again.